In this presentation, we'll talk about how to set up a basic website for our business. In a prior presentation, we talked about a business model in which we have a YouTube channel supporting what we currently do, whether that be an employee, whether that be a business that we have, or if we work as a contractor online at one of the larger platforms, we can typically set up a YouTube channel to help support what we do. That YouTube channel then, as it helps us to support, will also be able to help us drive traffic to a website, and the website can help us drive traffic to whatever we want to do, whether that be in contracting, business, tutoring, or if we want to create courses or something like that. So now we're thinking, okay, now we need our website. How are we going to be setting up this website? That seems to be a key component here. Now note, when you think about the website, there's a couple different uses you might say that you want for the website. On a basic usage purpose, if you're doing like contracting work, or if you're a tutor or something like that, it's really just a landing page. It's kind of like a LinkedIn page. You're saying, hey, here's what I do. Here's my contact information. Contact me if this thing looks like it's a good fit for you, and maybe we can work something out. You have a contact page there. So that means if it's just a contact page, you could even use a LinkedIn type of page. You could basically go into the LinkedIn page. I do think it's beneficial to have a LinkedIn page and a website as well. Now note that you could get a lot more complex with your website as well, because if you can also think about having a funnel. If you look into this a little bit further, you'll see a lot of people that will say that you actually need to have something that will be given to the person that lands on your webpage in exchange for data, such as an email address, and you have your sales funnel, and then you can continue to contact them and stuff like that. So you could set up your funnel, and that would be a more complex type of page. But at this point in time, let's just think about the idea that you just want a basic web page. And typically that web page, if it's just one page, it's going to say, hey, here it is, here's what I do, here's my contact information. Then it's going to be a fairly basic website. And again, you could use a LinkedIn page, but you'd probably want something a little bit more detailed. So the options we have for that web page, the two that I would think about, is one is going to be Wix, which is something you've probably heard of. They advertise a lot, which is a basic tool for building a web page. And the other one is going to be a WordPress site, which is an open source software where you actually own your domain and use a hosting company. So the difference between these two, the main difference is Wix, you're on someone else's server, you have less control. Whereas if you're on the WordPress site, then you own your own domain. And I think that's kind of nice. It's pretty nice. It is more labor intensive to use a WordPress site, but I think it might be worth it to look into the domain and working with a hosting company for a website to set up just basically a basic website, not too difficult. Wix is pretty straightforward. You could probably set up Wix within a few, like half a day to a day. WordPress, even for a basic site, might take you like 2 days or so to set up and learn the process, or more, just depending on the process. But a basic WordPress site, getting the hosting for it, URL, shouldn't take too long. In other words, all your data is going to be basically on their server, and you're going to be restricted to whatever tools that they use in their little Wix building tool. Now, if all you're doing is building one page where people land on, that's fine. Their tool's probably perfect for that, and you can build a very nice page and have that set up. Now, the WordPress is a bit more complex because it's not difficult to set up, but it's a little bit more difficult to set up than simply a Wix page. You have to have a host to set up, but you have a lot more control. And I really think it's kind of worthwhile to get a WordPress site going, just to get the domain out there and be able to work with the WordPress page on it in case you need it for your system later on. Notice that Wix, if there's a problem with Wix, then the whole page can go down. They're a big company, so there may not be, but and it's kind of restricted. Whereas WordPress, you would think if you own the actual domain, then you'd at least have that property, that domain, and it's a little bit more secure in that way. So I would think basically the general rule is if you're making just one page or less and you really don't want to spend a lot of time to learn a little bit more difficult skill of the WordPress, then possibly make the Wix page. If you're spending any more time than that, then you might just want to do the WordPress page, because I think it's a more long-term type of investment in it, because again, you're investing in the actual URL. So if you, for example, invest in your name as the URL, then you kind of lock that down, And even if you don't use your site for a while, at least you've kind of locked down the URL and you can go back to it at a later point in time. So here's the Wix page. You can just take a look at it. I won't go into detail. There's a whole lot of instructional videos on how to build a page on people that are a lot better at it than me. I'm just trying to give the overarching type of a method you might want to use. So you can go here and test it out, and it's, you know, no worries to do that. There's no real cost to do that. But just note that, again, it's going to be on their server and you have less control. If you were going to do something like a WordPress, this is basically a WordPress site, and notice the WordPress site has the URL, so you can have the URL basically being your name or something like that that's familiar. Then once you do that, you're locking down the URL. Now you have to pay for the URL itself, but it's pretty cheap. I mean, it's not more than like $9 a month or something like that to lock down the URL. So it's probably a good investment if you have something that you want to that you think you might use now and or in the future. And then once you set that up, you also need a host to set it up. Now, most people use the shared hosting plan, and if your website's only 1 to 2 pages, then you could do a shared hosting plan. I use this company here, A+, but they're not designed just for WordPress sites. This one seems to be very popular, Bluehost, for WordPress sites. So if you're doing a WordPress site specifically, you might go to this one. I'm not affiliated to them. This is just my understanding of it. But notice, I believe here you're still doing shared hosting on it. You could take a look at the prices of it and whatnot. And the problem with the shared hosting, and one of the problems with a WordPress site here, is that it could run slow based on different types of things, right? If you had the shared hosting, you got to worry about, you know, how many other people are on the server, how fast is your page going, and all this. But if you only have one page and you don't have it's not bogged down with a lot of stuff, like if you have a page that's 10 miles long down here and it goes down forever with a bunch of images and pictures and videos, then it could load slow. That's going to be the problem. But if your page is, you know, just some text page and basic type of information, maybe one video on it, and you can do some things to optimize that video on it so it loads faster, then it should load, you know, fine. It should be fine. But if you start obsessing with speed, then you're going to start thinking about going off the shared host and somewhere else. So I won't get into all the detail on that, but my basic rule would be if you're going to a Wix site, then you want something that's going to be fairly basic for the short term. If you want to have a longer term investment type of thing, then you want to lock down the domain, start working with a host, understand what it is to work with a host, and set up a WordPress site, which is a fairly basic thing to do. Then the WordPress site fits in your picture now. So if you have a YouTube channel, the YouTube channel now driving to the WordPress site, and the WordPress site saying, hey, this is what I do, right? Here's my contact information. Here's what I do, how possibly my price is on it and whatnot. And if you want an example of what I do, it could point to your YouTube channel, right? So it can loop around in that format. Now, the WordPress itself is an open source software, so an open source resource, meaning it's free, because a lot of people like pool together. It's kind of like a wiki thing, kind of like a wiki source where a lot of people pool together and update this thing. So I really like that it's an open source thing and a free thing, and it's something that a community is updating all the time. So I think it's a good thing. It's really popular, and there's a lot of videos on it, instructional videos to help you, an overwhelming amount of instructional videos, but really good ones too that they can help you out with this. And then you also need a theme. So if you were to do a WordPress site, then you need a basic theme. This is just a basic theme, right? I got a WordPress site, set up a basic theme, and then basically put my name and chose the color. And it's, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Probably take you a day or two to lock it down. But Wix, you can probably do in half a day to a day to set up a website. The WordPress will probably take you, a day to 2 days to really set it up. And then if you get more complex, you can then go for forever. But I mean, to set a page like this up doesn't take that much time at all. And then this theme is actually Simone is going to be the theme. So you could take a look at this. And the only reason I use this theme is because I looked this course up, and you can try to look this individual up. He was an instructor that I saw that I took a course on, and they had a free theme, and I appreciated the course, so I just picked up that theme, and it works fine for, again, like a one-page basic type of theme. So that's the overall type of thing I would think about these two. I would think about really quickly Wix if you just want to test it out, and then I think it's worthwhile to understand how a host works, and then a WordPress site. I think that's a worthwhile thing to do and a better long-term investment.